I'll be taking you through retinoblastoma, the current approach in the management, and I have no financial disclosures or interest. Very grateful to all the patients, parents, and my dear mentors, including Dr. Santosh Unavaran, Shields and Shields, and my team of specialists who are involved in the management of these children. So, before going on to the current management, retinoblastoma has been introduced and known way back in 15th century, and honoring all the clinicians and the researchers and these great personalities who have played a major role in retinoblastoma right from 18th century, giving it a name, introducing enucleation as a treatment, going on to plaque brachytherapy. And it was Dr. Karl Kupfer who introduced systemic chemotherapy way back in 1950s. So now we are going to see what is happening in 2021. So the primary goal of retinoblastoma management has not changed in 2021. It still remains saving life, followed by saving eyes and saving vision. So retinoblastoma in the clinical diagnosis, nothing has changed so far. It is a clinical diagnosis, retinoblastoma. Of course, additional diagnostic tools and ultrasound B scan still remains the main armamentarium in the diagnosis of retinoblastoma, although fundus fluorescein angiography, OCT has been introduced in the diagnosis in various situations as well. So just touching upon the classification, and we have Dr. Paul Tifinger here. He's going to take us through the AJCC classification. So what I just want to highlight here is what are we using currently? We are using the International Classification of Retinoblastoma, which has been introduced in 2003. And currently we have switched to not really switched, we have combined both the classification in most of our clinical practice. So just taking you through the International Classification of Intraocular Retinoblastoma, there has been certain shortcomings in this, and what I will be doing here is, rather than taking out the differences, I'm going to show how easily you can correlate these things and document and use in your clinical practice. So group A are those tumors which are less than 3 millimeters in size. We all know that group B are those with more than 3 millimeters in size, and subretinal fluid is included in group B as well. Now I'm just going to switch over to the TNM classification here. We have the clinical TNM classification and the pathological TNM classification. So when you want to document as a clinician and an ocular oncologist in your practice, so the CT1 talks about the size. So both group A and group B falls under the CT1, where less than 3 is the A and more than 3 is the B, whereas the subretinal fluid is not included over there. Then we come to the group C, where the confined seeds, tumors with confined seeds, which is very focal, close to the tumor, comes under group C, and those which is away from the tumor and diffuse comes under the group D. Switching over to the CTNMH classification. So when the fluid and seeds come to play and you find it in the clinical evaluation, then it is CT2. So it will be 2A if there is fluid, and if there is seeds, be it vitreous seeds or subretinal seeds, it will be 2B. So in the T1 classification, it's a size, and in T2, you have two parameters, which is the fluid and the seeds. Now, group E are those extensive tumors, intraocular tumors, all these features. Dr. Anirban has also highlighted neovascular glaucoma, intraocular hemorrhage, aseptic orbital cellulitis, prethysis and thysis bulbi, which falls under E, which is extensive. Now, when we talk about TNMH, the CT3, actually group E involves in the CT3, and in fact, in T3, you have A to E. Depending upon the clinical features, including thysis, anterior segment invasion, intraocular pressure, neovascular glaucoma, ophthalmos, hyphema, massive vitreous hemorrhage, and aseptic orbital cellulitis, which is at the end of the spectrum, the E spectrum. And CT4 is also included, the extraocular tumor, which is not there in the international classification of retinoblastoma, which is either you diagnose it radiologically, and if it is clinically very much evident, then it is 4B. So this is how I correlate for an easy remembering of these classification to include in our documentation. So AJCC TNM classification was introduced in 2017, and what is most important in retinoblastoma currently, what we see in the AJCC TNM classification is the addition of the hereditary component, which is not included in any other cancers or tumors in the body. So again, we have the clinical TNM classification and the pathological TNM classification. So Dr. Paul Finger is going to take us through the entire work on this in the next keynote lecture. Next is a classification of vitreous seeds, and this has been a recent introduction after we gone through the evolution of treating the vitreous seeds. And this is basically a morphological classification where if you find spherules seeds, it's comes under spherules, the dusting of the vitreous seeds, and then the cloud. So this is basically a morphological classification which was put forward by Munir et al. Now, going on to the current treatment protocols in retinoblastoma. Retinoblastoma, we all know, is a curable eye cancer, and the primary management eye saving primary management would be systemic chemotherapy and intraarterial chemotherapy, apart from enucleation in advanced intraocular retinoblastoma. So each of it has pros and cons, and this basically touching upon a country like India. Systemic chemotherapy is something which is very financially feasible for our patients who come from the financially a backward society. And the most important thing when you compare intraarterial chemotherapy with systemic chemotherapy is that it achieves all three goals, especially in a country like less developing country, where we see more advanced cases where there is high risk of systemic micrometastasis. Intraarterial chemotherapy, we do have centers in India. It is effective, but currently it's quite expensive for the patients to afford. Adjuvant modalities, yes, we still use cryotherapy, laser therapy, transpupillary thermotherapy, periocular chemotherapy, and the recent introduction of intraocular chemotherapy, intravitreal and intracameral chemotherapy has helped us in salvaging many eyes. And of course, plug brachytherapy, which is a very localized radiotherapy for retinoblastoma. Systemic intravenous chemotherapy, there has not been change in any protocols. It has been the time-tested protocols of vincristine, etoposide, and carboplatin. And well, we have seen very good outcome with systemic intravenous chemotherapy with retinoblastoma. As you can see here, a group A, B, and C eyes, which is completely regressed with a systemic intravenous chemotherapy with good eye salvage rate. But then the difficult situation comes is the group D eyes and the group E eyes. Group D eyes, well, from the literature, it is around 50 to 70% salvage with systemic chemotherapy and additional other treatment, while group E eyes mostly go for enucleation. Now, this is where intra-arterial chemotherapy plays a role major in salvaging these group D eyes. So the eye salvage with intraarterial chemotherapy in group D eyes has been extremely beneficial. And one of the other thing is that it takes care of only eye salvage because it's a very targeted therapy, and systemic live salvage is not part of intraarterial chemotherapy. So it's basically a direct introduction of chemotherapeutic agents into the ophthalmic artery, and the drugs are totally different from what we use for systemic chemotherapy. It's melphalan, topotecan, and carboplatin, be it a single drug, a double drug, or a triple drug. So these are few of the results with intraarterial chemotherapy. This is after 4 sessions in a group EI, and this is a group DI where, which is in the periphery, and it has been treated completely resolved. So peripheral tumors, these are where even vision salvage was possible with intraarterial chemotherapy after 3 sessions for a peripheral tumor. And as you can see here, correlated with the OCT where fovea is absolutely healthy. And is it safe? Yes, it is safe. And this was the youngest patient that I have in my series, 4 weeks of age, with bilateral retinoblastoma and unilateral bilaterally treated. One eye with intraarterial chemotherapy, and the other eye was treated with transpupillary thermotherapy focally. So this is what the comparison is between chemoreduction and systemic chemotherapy and intraarterial chemotherapy. What you see is the major jump of eye salvage from 47% from 85% to 94% in intraarterial chemotherapy. And this is a review where group E eyes are not, intraarterial chemotherapy is not too beneficial in group E eyes. Whatever the advancement is, whatever the advance in the techniques are, we should also recognize and realize there are downfalls to it. We should recognize the vision threatening complications associated with it, so that the case selection is based on that. So more than the indication, we should be able to know what you should not be doing with intraarterial chemotherapy. The contraindication has to be outlined very, very well. In advanced intraocular RBs with clinical high-risk features, it should not be used. Bilateral IAC, if vision salvage is a factor, then it should be avoided as well. Now, management of vitreous seeds with intravitreal chemotherapy is something which is a boon, although we had hesitated to go inside an eye with tumor earlier. So this is a child, one eye enucleated, only one eye, where he had a recurrence, and the only treatment given was intravitreal topotecan. Now, the use of intravitreal topotecan has been broadened in my practice, and I'm sure in most of your practice. This is an endophytic tumor which was treated with intravitreal topotecan. In our series, we had recurrence in one patient, and the regression has been 100%, and this recurrence was due to the tumor recurrence that the patient had. Last, intracameral injection. Again, topotecan is my favorite in an intracameral injection, where we go clear corneal. And this is a child who had bilateral anterior segment RB, and this is one eye, and the other eye has already gone for phthisis after treatment. So we had to save the right eye with the ciliary body involvement. In fact, his retina was absolutely fine, and he received intracameral chemotherapy and intravitreal chemotherapy to salvage that one eye. Enucleation, yes, we should also know that high-risk features in enucleation is very, very important for life salvage. I'm just touching upon the life salvage in retinoblastoma, which Dr. Santosh is not. So post-enucleation adjuvant chemotherapy is very, very important in order to save the life of these children. Orbital retinoblastoma, again, the introduction of intensive multimodal treatment protocol, including high-dose chemotherapy, enucleation, and radiotherapy, has actually helped us salvage the life in most of these children, where compared to other treatment modalities, it has been 90% in our study. So take-home message from this particular talk would be that retinoblastoma management, the primary goal is always life salvage. And in fact, the newer modalities has helped us to salvage more eyes and also improvement of vision. Thank you very much for your patient listening.